Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another PC Boys podcast. I'm your host, Logan Locke. So, it's been a while since I've done a PC Boys episode here on the main channel. Obviously, school and everything has been very busy in the newsroom and stuff, and I do podcasts for the newsroom. So, naturally, I just haven't been having as much time to do podcasts, so they're more spread out, as per usual. And of course, I have to take the time to edit, and now I make thumbnails and stuff, so there's a little bit more time that goes into making a podcast. But I decided, there's been quite a bit of few things that has happened, and I wanted to discuss them with you guys. Now, for any of you that are interested in Gamergate Part 2 and the whole, Matt Walsh fallout of making fun of gamers and stuff, I'll be doing that as a Rumble podcast, because that is not only a nerd issue, but, in the pop culture space, but it also deals with, political commentators and stuff, hence why I'm putting it on the Rumble channel when I get around to doing that. But so if you're looking forward to me doing a rant on that and everything, you'll have to look forward to the Rumble video on it. But today we're going to be talking about, quite a bit of new things that's happened. Obviously the Season 2 Reloaded update for Modern Warfare 3, kind of just going to skim through that a little bit, and give my takes on that. Talking about the major New Game Plus update for Spider-Man 2, as well as the Outlast Trials, which is finally launched on console, I think a week and a half ago or so. But starting off with the Call of Duty update, pretty simple stuff. They added in a new zombies warlord, a new Ether Rift portal with cutscenes and stuff that explains that Dr. Jansen is the daughter of Elizabeth Gray from the Cold War game, and I guess there's this insinuation that Ravenov is the father. But we'll have to wait and see how all that works. I'd have to do a whole podcast in depth about what's going on with Call of Duty Zombies, but the story is actually not that bad. It's just the game mode doesn't have much content. They also added in exfil streaks, so just like DMZ, where the more you exfilled consistently, you would get special perks and stuff for when you make your next deployment. They're doing the same thing in terms of zombies, except instead of it being exfilling that increases your streak, it's how many contracts you complete per exfil. So if you complete, let's say 10 contracts or more, right, you get these containment levels that go up, and when you exfil, you unlock all the rewards. So it's a lot better than the DMZ system, where you can unlock all the rewards over a smaller period of games instead of playing tens of 20s of games just to get all the awards possible. You can do it within a few matches, which I think is pretty cool. It gives another incentive for people to play the game and to unlock some new stuff. As well, with this update, comes some, balances and stuff for weapons and equipment, fixing patches, or bugs and stuff. So, not a bunch of major things going on within this update in particular. There is the Warhammer event that's going on right now, and the Warhammer bundles and shit that you can purchase. I think there's going to be 3 in the store for this event. But yeah, so that's going on right now. But overall, Call of Duty-wise, not a heck of a lot. Obviously, on the multiplayer side of things, you got some new maps. They have added in, I believe they've added in by this point, the overgrown versions of maps that they've already made. So there's that. But overall, right now, for Modern Warfare 3, it's just kind of boring overall. But the biggest and most exciting thing for me personally is the Spider-Man 2 New Game Plus update, which came with a bunch of changes and even things that they didn't mention to us, such as in the skill trees, you now can unlock New Game Plus skills, and they're active, obviously throughout the entire playthrough and stuff, and they just enhance the bonuses and stuff that you would have gotten by just completing the base game. They also added in golden gadgets, so of course when you replay through the game and you get tokens and stuff, you can unlock golden versions of every gadget. From as far as I can tell, there is no major gameplay mechanic with the golden versions. It's just a skin, so take that as you will. As well as that, they of course added in the Fly and Fresh pack, which you can buy, I think, for like $5 or something like that, and it goes towards a charity, or not a charity, but like a nonprofit or something that helps like diversity gamers or whatnot. And it will become free at some point, but this is what the suits look like. I know it's a very low res image. I apologize. For some reason, when I was looking online, I just kept getting low res images. And as well, Moon Knight and Falcon and Winter Soldier are coming out on Blu-ray April 30th, same day. I'm going to be copying me the Moon Knight one because I've been waiting for this release for a fucking long time now. I really enjoyed Moon Knight. But, so, I also put up all the different additional symbiote styles that we got with this New Game Plus update. So, they added in this new feature called Ultimate Levels. So, kind of like with Call of Duty, once you complete the major, like, 55 levels, you have your prestige levels. It's kind of like that, but for this game, and with every level that you get, you unlock a new symbiote suit style for one of the 3 symbiote suits. So, here's the New Game Plus suits for the symbiote suit. That's literally the name of the suit. You have the original black suit, you have an anti-venom version, you have, like, the King in Black version with, like, the red logo and stuff, which is funny because I've seen this logo way back before New Game Plus actually was even coming out. And then you have more of a Carnage-looking one that has the white logo. I mean, if I had the red, or not the red, black logo, it would look more Carnage-like, but it's got, like, the crimson red. With the anti-venom suit customization, yet again, relatively very simple. You have the original white one. You have this like grayish white one, which in my opinion, I think looks the best out of all of the anti-venom symbiote styles. I think that this one is the best. You have the venom looking, or excuse me, the Carnage looking one. This one actually looks like Carnage because it's got the black logo and everything. And then, of course, you have, like, the Agent Venom / Mr. Negative color palette, which is essentially just inverting what the white version is. But I personally prefer the more gray-looking one out of all of them. The reason the red one doesn't work for me on either of them is because there's no red tendrils. Maybe that's something they could add in a future update, is adding red tendrils. And then it would work with the red suits, which I think would be pretty cool. And then for the black suit, you got, like the symbiote suit, you have a black suit with a red variation of the symbols and stuff on it. The anti-venom looking version, which in my opinion is fucking great. I think, in all honesty, I think the black suit probably got like the worst out of all the different suits. And then you got the black suit, but where there's normally black, they just put in some red shading. I think the black suit got the worst things in this update. I do like the anti-venom version. I think that that is a pretty solid looking suit, but outside of that, this just kind of feels like a recolor of this. Plus, I think it looks better on this version of the suit than this one. Although, at least in this picture in particular, the red's more vibrant on this one. This one's just inverted. You have the red here, but it's black like this one, so it's not much different. So really, the only major different one that there is the white one. But yeah, and then of course, to give a visual of like what the golden gadgets look like, this is like the golden web shooter, and that applies for every single gadget category. And ultimately, this update, also came with the ability to change the time of day during the free roam part of the map, which was a highly requested feature, which I think is amazing, and it's great that they did that. But I think the fact that New Game Plus actually gives you a lot to work for, not only for like the new suit styles, the golden gadgets, but also having like new abilities in the skill tree, I think is great. They also added in the mission replay feature, which everybody's been wanting. So, of course, you can sit there and play Venom all day long through that one mission if you want to. But ultimately, a lot of great stuff. And I think that, if they do decide to put a DLC out for this game, which a lot of people want it to be a Carnage DLC, but that's going to be saved for the Venom game that comes out next year, I believe. Which makes sense to me. I mean, why would you make a Venom game and not have Carnage in it? They set Carnage up for that game. So I'm looking forward to Venom's return in the Insomniac universe and how they're going to exactly do that. I'm just very excited to see how that's going to all play out. As well, there was also the leaked Spider-Man Multiverse multiplayer game, or I think it was like Spider-Man and the Great Web, I think was the name of the game. But it was essentially like the Spider-Man game that we have now from Insomniac, But it just has multiplayer features in it. And you can fight Venom and stuff like that. Someone can play as Venom, kind of looking like there's like a Venom versus Spider-Man kind of mode and whatnot. But yeah, ultimately, I really liked it. It looked awesome. It looked fun. You had Gwen Stacy in there. You had Spider-Man 2099 in there. You had Ben Reilly. And although, these are already suit styles that are within the Insomniac game, you can actually play with, like, the multiverse in that game. And you can actually jump into different multiverses through portals, like Spider-Verse portals and stuff, and fight in those alternate universes. And I'm so mad that they canceled the game because I think it would have worked well. Spider-Man 2 already had the in with the multiverse concept with getting the Spider-Bots and returning them to the multiverse. So they literally had an in for this game to make sense continuity-wise, but they scrapped it, and I don't know why. Like, for fuck's sake, Resident Evil put out RE-verse, right, and Resident Evil Resistance, and I think if Resident Evil can do that, why not Spider-Man? Matter of fact, I think Spider-Man would sell tenfold. And some people could say it's like a cash grab, live service, multiplayer game, but when you look at how quality the Insomniac games are from a gameplay perspective, I mean, say what you will about the story, but from the gameplay perspective, Insomniac's Spider-Man game is a very good game. And the gameplay of the game is the strongest part of the Insomniac games, in my opinion. I mean, the stories are fine. I think Spider-Man 2 had a weaker story than Spider-Man 1 because it felt very rushed once we got to Venom in the game. But ultimately, this update was great. For the most part. I have some critiques, of course, like I said, about the black suit and the styles that they added. I think they could have done a little bit more. Like, they could have given a full-on red variation, like they did with the anti-venom suit, they did with the, symbiote suit. So for the black suit, they should have just given them a red variation, and I think it would have worked fine. But overall, I'm still happy with the update. I don't have any major complaints. There are some bugs and stuff that they still need to fix in the game, like audio lines, like, for instance, you'll be doing, free roam, and then Spider-Man will be like, where do these symbiotes come from? And no symbiotes are there. So there's things like that. There's still, like, out, like, world, side missions that will pop up and you'll go to them and there's nothing going on there, but there's, like, damage and destruction, but there's no enemies and stuff, so, like, there's stuff like that they gotta fix. Ultimately, though, I have very minor gripes with this update, and they put a lot more in it than we expected. Like I said, the skill tree thing, we weren't expecting. The golden gadgets thing, I don't think we were expecting either. We knew we were going to get new symbiote suit styles. We knew New Game Plus was going to be added, and we knew that there was going to be the replay mission feature and the time of day stuff. But those little things that Insomniac added into the game, I think is really great, and it helps the community want to keep playing this game and investing money into it, which is great. And, PlayStation, of course, has Helldivers going on right now, which is monumentally successful, proving more that indie games or non-AAA studio games can absolutely take off and do amazing. And they've been doing a great job of, keeping in contact with community and everything. But overall, I'm very excited about that. I think that's great. Also, another little nugget in here for my Scream fans and my movie side of things, because this is a video game, podcast today. Nev Campbell is back for Scream 7. So I have that up on Twitter. So that's really great news. I'm happy that Nev is back. Just hopefully they can make the story good now that, Melissa Barrera is gone and pretty much most of the other cast I think is gone. I think Jenna Ortega also stepped out on Scream 7. So I don't know what they're going to do with Scream 7, but my hope is that it's a good movie and that it makes sense, because they were building up Melissa Barrera's character, and now that she's gone, I don't know what they're going to do about that. And that storyline. Because now when you watch through those movies, it's going to be like, well, it built up to nothing. Unless there's something going on behind the scenes, but I personally haven't heard anything about it. But yeah, lots of great news gaming-wise, for once. I could sit here and I could rant about Call of Duty all day, but I'm not going to do that because it's pointless. I mean, everyone's looking forward to Call of Duty 2024, or aka Call of Duty Gulf War, as of right now. But I will say about the Outlast trials, touching upon this. This game has obviously been out on PC for a while now, but it released on consoles, and it's got great reviews. The game servers don't crash on you, and on top of that, the gameplay is very solid. My only major critique about the Outlast Trials is that the game is not scary. It's obviously disturbing, as any Outlast game is, with, the content in it and stuff, and someone that is a Christian playing Outlast. There's obviously things in there that I'm very not with, obviously, but I've always been a horror fan, and Outlast has always managed to be scary, or at the very least shocking, with how far they go with their gore and their themes and stuff like that, which I can appreciate in its own right, even though I don't agree with the things in it, especially with, like, how they use religion and stuff in the Outlast franchise. I'm not a fan of that, but I do have to give respect for them, being very out there with the things that they do. But that's my major critique with Outlast Trials is just, it's not scary to me when I'm playing through it. It doesn't scare me. Like, when I play through Outlast 1 or I play through Outlast 2, I actually am scared because, number one, you're not playing with friends. You're by yourself, so that feeling of isolation and not having anybody being able to call out where the enemies are and stuff, like, is really, it really changes everything. Outlast 1 in particular was probably the most scary, in my opinion, because you didn't have a healing mechanic. You had to hide. There was no talking with your friends like in Outlast Trials. And it was a really fucked up game. Outlast 2 was a very fucked up game too, but in my opinion, Outlast 2 didn't have the tension that Outlast 1 had, because in Outlast 2, you had the ability to use a microphone to, like, hear enemies and stuff, from further away. You had the ability to, heal yourself and bring bandages, or have bandages on your person at all times to heal yourself. So ultimately, Outlast 2 added in gameplay features that made the game less scary and have less consequences than the very first Outlast game. And Outlast Trials, of course, carries that, with being able to, drink medicine and stuff, which is the version of the bandage in Outlast 2. But one thing I will say about Outlast 2 is that there were moments in the game that were much scarier, like the dream sequences or the hallucination sequences in, like, the Catholic school and stuff, like with the crazy monster and stuff there. I think that was very, that was probably the scariest parts of the game for me, rather than the little town. But yeah, Outlast Trials is a very solid game. If you guys haven't played it, I would suggest it, especially if you're into horror games and stuff. It's just, don't go into it expecting it to be as scary as the other Outlast games. I mean, you're playing with other people, so you're not, you don't have the feeling of isolation. It's still fucked up. It's still gory and whatnot. But at the end of the day, while that is the case, it's just not scary because, like I said, there is no feeling of isolation. You can call out enemies to your friends and stuff. You can also tag team enemies if you want to, if someone's being, like, hurt or something. And it's not like the first game, or the second game in regards to being by yourself and having to be careful about where you go and hiding and the penalties of course, getting caught and being surrounded by a bunch of enemies. And that's another thing, too, about Outlast Trials that isn't as scary. Normally, for each level, there's a few enemies on each trial map that chase you, if you will. But there's really, like, one enemy that chase you, and then there's, certain enemies that just stay in certain areas of the map. I would say the most scary part about Outlast Trials is, like, when you go to hide in a locker or something and there's, like, one of those hiders and then they pop out at you and start beating the fuck out of you. That's probably, like, the scariest part of Outlast Trials. But I still appreciate them taking a chance and doing an online game that is fun, but it's something that you have to get accustomed to, because it is a little bit different than your previous Outlast games in that sense. Now, one thing the Outlast Trials does do is explain Outlast 2. Now, Outlast 2 is a game that, when it came out, as fun as it was and as scary as it was, it made no fucking sense story-wise. Like, Outlast 1 and the Whistleblower DLC were pretty basic knowledge games. You could play through the story and understand what's going on, and if you wanted to, you could read the confidential files and stuff you pick up throughout the game, to understand the lore more. But, like, the Wall Rider project and everything, at Mount Massive, like, you relatively understood everything that was going on. Outlast 2 made no sense because the Murkoff Corporation was so loosely added into that story that you really don't understand what's going on. Now, in Outlast 2, you know the Murkoff Corporation exists because there's a scene where you're like out on the edge of this lake and you look off into the distance and you see like this huge facility out there where the sounds are coming from that has been, going on throughout the game, and the flashing lights, and it causes you to go into like a vision mode, like you're seeing things that don't exist, right? And it's playing mind tricks with you. And every time these lights and sounds go off, it also affects all the villagers and stuff as well. So when you think about it, it made no sense. But you knew that chances are that was the Murkoff Corporation at play, and that was the only really reference in the second game to the very first game. Like every audio log you record, every paper that you pick up and you read, you realize they don't really connect to the first game in any capacity. However, in the Outlast trials, by picking up all the different evidences that are throughout each trial, scattered around, reading into it, and of course completing the Outlast trials and earning your quote-unquote freedom, you understand what the Outlast trials is. So the Outlast trials has a facility out in the middle of the desert that you end up seeing in Outlast 2. And they constructed it in the 1950s to essentially conduct experiments and turning people into sleeper agents by breaking down their mind, reprogramming their mind through the Outlast trials to conduct assassination missions across the world for the CIA. That's essentially what the Outlast trials is. Like, you are somebody that is being programmed to be a person that commits assassination attempts. At the end of the very first Outlast trials, run, you end up awaking in a bed, and you're in Cuba, and you come to find out that, you went for an assassination mission on Castro, it didn't work out, and it failed, and then you hear a phone ring, you pick it up, and then you're essentially, reprogrammed through some trigger words to go back and try to do the assassination attempt again. And in the second, ending that you get by doing it, you are in front of a embassy or a hotel in Vietnam, and you're like a suicide bomber. So the Outlast trials, it's very apparent why they exist. And it explains actually a lot more as to, Mount Massive, right? They reference numerous times Mount Massive and exchanging some of the prisoners from Mount Massive Asylum into this, training facility, or this Outlast Trials facility out in the middle of the desert, to participate in the trials. And like I said, it just makes a lot of sense now, because you find out that Noth, the main villain or the main guy from Outlast 2, he was actually somebody that took place in the Outlast trials in this facility and managed to escape. And of course, they kept tabs on him and stuff throughout the years. But of course, you come to find out that Noth was indeed a part of the Outlast trials at one point in history. So it connects Outlast 2 with Noth. And then, of course, finding out that that facility in the middle of the woods in Outlast 2 is, of course, the Outlast Trials facility, but in the modern day instead of the 1950s. But it also explains what Mount Massive was doing with Project Walrider, and the fact that the Murkoff Corporation had many different projects going on throughout the United States that were involved in many different things, right? In terms of scientific research and whatnot. And you even see the doctor, I forgot what his name was, from the first Outlast game, the German Nazi doctor that was, in the wheelchair and stuff. You see him in the sleep room in Outlast Trials, because he's, watching over the regents. I think that's the name of, the people that take part in the Outlast Trials. He's overlooking them and stuff. So I do find it to be a very interesting game where they are, with Outlast Trials, they are connecting the second game directly into the story, by the, files that you can find, as well as the endings and stuff, and kind of explaining what the Murkoff Corporation is doing. But Outlast 2, even though we now understand where Noth came from, the fact that he took place in the Outlast trials, and, the government and Murkoff Corporation kept tabs on him, the fact that that facility where they were doing the Outlast trials is, of course, still existing in the modern day, Outlast 2, even though that it's now directly connected into the Murkoff Corporation and everything, it still feels like its own game. It doesn't feel like it's still connected when you play through Outlast 2 anyways. Sure, with the context, you're like, okay, it's in the greater universe, but the game is very self-contained. I would argue Mount Massive and the very first game has a much deeper connection to the Outlast trials than the second game. But that ultimately is the story of Outlast Trials, and I have no doubt that in the future they'll add more DLCs and they'll add more endings to give some more clarity on things. But yeah, that's really all I wanted to talk about today on the podcast. I originally planned on doing a little bit more of a rant on Call of Duty, but I said, there's no point in it. Like, you can rag Call of Duty day and night for what they do, and not much is going to happen. It's just Call of Duty at this point. It's just what you come to expect from them. But I hope you guys enjoyed, I will be streaming more Outlast on my Twitch channel. I've been streaming it a little bit, as it is. As well, I've been playing Spider-Man 2, the New Game Plus mode, just trying to unlock everything I can, when I got time and stuff. I'm still debating on buying Helldivers, because, number one, I'm very busy with school. I work 12 hours on the weekends just to pay bills, essentially. And on top of that, I don't really think I can afford another subscription. Like, even if I, buy Helldivers, I still have to pay for PlayStation Plus to play Helldivers. And for me, it doesn't seem like worth the cost because I already pay for Xbox Live and Game Pass. So the point of buying Helldivers and then having to spend on another whole subscription just to play one game, in my opinion, is not worth it. Now, if PlayStation was my main console, which it's not, then that'd be a whole different story. It'd just be one subscription. I'd be playing everything on there anyways. But I've always been playing on Xbox. All my games and stuff are owned on Xbox. So the only reason I really got PlayStation is so I can play Marvel games for the most part. And of course the exclusives that come out here and there. If Helldivers was like a single player game and you could choose to play online and stuff, I'd do Helldivers. Buy it, no problem. But since it's not that way, I'm going to have to wait till I'm making more money before I can, get Helldivers and take a deep dive into that. But I'm happy that the game's doing very well. My cousin's been playing it. He's been saying it's pretty good. So, a lot of good news on that front. But, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you very much for listening. And remember, if you are waiting on the Gamergate, Matt Walsh versus Geeks and Gamers in general, I will be talking about that on my Rumble channel at some point coming up. That's going to be my next major Rumble video. So, for once, it's actually connected to pop culture stuff. But thank you very much for listening. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll catch you all in the next one.